What is up, gamers? We are here today with a very special Duel Masters deck profile. So this is a mono water liquid people deck. It uses the evolutions in order to gain a field advantage, to set up a perfect board, and uses shield triggers and support spells to control the board to set up that perfect field in order to just close the game out and deal the killing blow. But let's get on to the actual card list now. For Aqua Guard, this is our bread and butter. This is the card you want to see in your opening hand at the beginning of every game. It's a very good creature. It's 1 mana, it's a blocker, it can get a lot done, and it's very important for our follow-up play because there's a lot of evolutions in this deck. Next up, we are playing 3 Aqua Vehicle. This card is just another Evo bait. I found when I was playtesting the deck that this is kind of like a Garnet. It's a card you don't always want, but when you do need it, you need it. And I found 4 would clog up the deck and make it a brick. 2, you wouldn't get it when you need it. And I found that 3 was just the right amount. Speaking of evolution, we've got 4 Crystal Spin Slicers. This is our main evolution. This is the one that we run max copies of. It has a very amazing power to cost ratio. For just 2 mana, we get a 5,000 power blocker, so it's a excellent play on turn 2. You just play Aqua Guard, you evolve it, and you've got a beater. You've got a pretty good late game blocker too. It does a lot. It can even attack. It's not restricted in any way. Another card we have a max set of is Emerald. This guy is amazing. He's banned. Not banned, he is restricted to 1 in the Japanese version of the game for a good reason. You play him, you set one of your shield triggers. We're playing 12 in fact. Even though this guy is not a liquid people, he can't be evolved on, you still want to max him out just because his ability is so useful. Next up, we got 4 McDonald's promo Aqua Hulkus. This guy is amazing. He's level 3. You get to draw a card when you summon him. He's the ideal turn 3 play. Only 3 Aqua Strummers. I think this card is a little underrated. I actually like it a lot. I found 2 didn't have enough impact. 3 was just right. 4 was a bit bricky because Aqua Hulkus is the superior turn 3 play, but this card isn't bad. You always want to play 1 less of it, of whatever amount of Aqua Hulkus you have. It has a pretty good ability that you get to basically, I think the Magic the Gathering term is scry, where you get to rearrange a certain amount of cards from the top of your deck. Being able to check the top 5 cards and just set up the next couple turns is pretty good. And since a lot of the cards in this deck let you draw, like Aqua Hulkus, you can fix your deck in a way that you'll put Aqua Hulkus on top or whatever draw card on top, and then set up your next couple of draws in order to just have the perfect sort of flow for your next couple turns. And I like that a lot. 2 Crystal Paladin. This card is a blowout, but not always, because some decks don't run any blockers, but that's fine because he's still a 5,000 power evolution, so he can attack immediately when you summon him. Lucky Ball. This card is amazing. In this deck, you are going to be beating your opponent down. You're going to be breaking their shields. I know a lot of players prefer to run only 3 of this guy, but I think this card is just stupidly good. It's so broken. 4 Aqua Surfer. This card is amazing. It's a shield trigger, so you can sometimes get it for free, or if you have Emerald, you can always get it for free. It lets you bounce any card, so it's very flexible. You might even want to bounce your own guys in some kind of very specific situation. And lastly, we're at the spell cards. So for spells, we only have 8 spell cards. We've got 4 Emergency Typhoon. I played around with a lot of the different draw spells in water, and I found this one is by and far the best. This is a more aggressive, faster deck, so I went for the cheapest one possible. It's a shield trigger, which means you can combo with Emerald. It lets you draw 2 cards and then discard a card. That might seem like a very steep drawback since this deck has absolutely no recursion. It's not like Armor Burn where you can combo with Clone Nightmare or Zombie Carnival, but it's still good. It lets you get really deep into the deck. It lets you tweak what you need. We have some cards that honestly we can throw away, like Strummer. Don't always need it if we have Aqua Hulkus. We can also get rid of Aqua Vehicle and not be that disappointed about that. And just being able to get further through the deck for a lower cost is already such a good point of consideration. I think this is the best water draw spell, especially in a more aggressive build. In a deck that has more graveyard synergy, it's even better. But in this deck, it's not half bad. I found that it was a better choice than playing Energy Stream, since if I had that card in hand and Aqua Hulkus, I would always want to drop Aqua Hulkus instead. So it ended up being almost a dead card. But when I had this, I usually would play it if I didn't have Emerald or Spin Slicer. So this was a very good backup plan for whatever I was doing. And last but not least is Spiral Gate. Very good card, very classic removal. It's a shield trigger, so you can set it up as a trap. It lets you bounce any creature. It has no restrictions. It's very good removal, very good denial. Lets you just clear the board. I have some sort of runner-ups, honorable mentions, because again, I said this is a budget deck, but that's kind of not true anymore because Duel Masters cards are so damn expensive. So I'm giving alternatives and sort of just substitutes you can play if you can't get certain cards or you don't have enough of certain cards. And these cards are obviously not as good as what I built because it's not the optimal list, but you can still have something to work with. So we're going to start off with Crystal Lancer. Very decent. I think this card is overrated, but it's good on paper. It's level 6, it's a liquid people, it's an evolution, so it has haste, it's a double breaker, which is pretty appealing since most of these cards are single breaker, and it can't be blocked, and it has 8,000 power, which is just by and far better than any of the other liquid people evolutions. I don't think anything is stronger than this one. I think Jouster is 7k. Not a bad card. The only problem is it's very expensive, and if you want to make this card work, you either need to play a water nature hybrid in order to ramp up and play this earlier, but then you have to kind of compromise a lot of the cards in order to play Fairy Life or Bronze Arm or Poison Mushroom or whatever. There's one ramp spell for water, but it's kind of a little janky. You've got Eureka Charger, another card. So for 4, you can draw a card, and then as the spell resolves, it goes into your mana zone. That can help you get into Crystal Lancer a little earlier, but I feel like this card is not so good in a mono water deck. I typically play it in hybrid decks. If you had a draw card in water, you'd probably play Aqua Hulkus, Energy Stream, Emergency Typhoon. This card I think is just so overrated. Illusionary Merfolk. So if you have a Cyberlord, you can draw up to 3 cards when you summon this guy. In my build, I only have 4 Cyberlords, so you kind of have to build around it. You need to have more Cyberlords, but apart from Emerald, the only other Cyberlord that you would run in this deck also costs 5, which runs into a bit of a conflict where you have to play one in a specific sequence, and with Lucky Ball, there's no restriction. You just have to be attacking and make sure your opponent's shields go down. Another card here that you might want to run is Brain Serum. Now, this is a level 4 spell, draws you 2 cards, and is a shield trigger. It's not a bad target for Emerald. It is overcosted. You do feel like a loser when you hard cast this, but you do feel like a king when you get it from shields. I don't know. I think this is probably one of the weaker draw spells, but it is from the original base set, so it's very easy to get a set of these. Next is Thrashcrawler, and I didn't even sleeve these. Thrashcrawler, he's a cool guy. He's a blocker. He lets you fix your mana. He's more found in rub control ruby because he lets you sort of recycle your resources. And the thing is, if you're playing a deck with crystal lancer, you want to get to 6 mana, and this card, you must return a mana card to your hand, so that's non-negotiable. And if you're trying to ramp up to Crystal Lancer, this is actually counterintuitive to the game plan. This is more often found in a control build where you would want to play this on turn 4 and bounce back a Spiral Gate to follow up with, or an Emerald to set another shield and do something with. This isn't bad at all though, because it's got a good power to cost ratio. The drawback can be a benefit if you build your deck around recycling resources, but if you're playing the ramp build, it's not that good. The other problem is it's Earth Eater, which means it doesn't have any evolutions, doesn't really interact. It's a little clunky. I'd say 2-3 copies, 0 if you're trying to get Lancer out. This is more found in a control deck, and this is an aggro build, so it doesn't really have a place, but some people do more control-oriented versions of this style of deck, so I thought it was worth bringing up and mentioning at all. And then we have Energy Stream. It's consistent, it's reliable, it's the middle of the road, perfectly average draw spell. I would rather play as many creatures as possible, but this is definitely a reliable alternative. It's, I can't say anything bad about this card. It's Energy Stream, it's good. And lastly is Coral. I found this card was kind of just overrated. It didn't really put in any work for me. You'd typically want to bounce a blocker with this, but if you're playing Crystal Paladin, blockers don't really do anything. They're just kind of irrelevant. And the blockers that you would want to get rid of, like Juliana, you can't even target with Coral. Crystal Paladin can hit Juliana because it targets everything on the board, not a specific card. I used to think it was the bee's knees, but now I'm an adult and I know better. And Coral is kind of overrated. If you want to use Illusionary Merfolk, I'd say it's a little better since it has synergy as it's a Cyberlord, but yeah, I don't like Illusionary Merfolk. I think these are both overrated. I think in a control build though, they definitely have a good synergy, since turn 5 is going to be when you start getting busy and not when you're closing out the game like this build. But that was for all the alternatives. There's probably a couple that I missed, and if you have any suggestions or substitutes yourself, chime off in the comments. Let me know what you would have run instead. So yeah, there's the deck. Let me know what you think. What would you change? Do you like it? Have you tried anything similar to this? Anyway, thank you for watching, and catch you gamers later.